Good evening. This is Sam Pearson, the host for the after-game analysis of the Houston Rockets and the Detroit Pistons. And our after-game analysis is brought to you by Sport Business Classroom, and our official title is Shot Talk. So we're going to give a quick wrap-up of the game. We had the announcers and the game analysts, my colleagues Marlena Rodriguez and Kelsley Williams, and so they'll be providing some of the observations that they saw tonight and give some of the recap. The main thing here tonight was the matchup of the number 1 and the number 2 players in the draft. Jalen Suggs with 25 points and Cade Cunningham with 20. And I'm going to start with you, Marlene. How did you think that both players performed tonight?
Yeah, I want to say this was definitely a primetime game. It was a packed house in here, and just seeing the fans too. I think even NBA Twitter was going crazy, going to see who was going to kind of take the matchup tonight. I think definitely Jalen Green. He got the dub with his team, Houston Rockets. So again, I was telling Kelsley earlier, I'm like, there's going to be many, many more games to see these guys together. So
these guys are linked. They are linked. And one thing I noticed that Kelsley, in your description of the game, your color review of the game, you talked about the tweet that was sent earlier that kind of put a challenge out there. If you want to expand upon that for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've got a tweet. Jalen Green was actually on live on Instagram prior to the game, and he was definitely giving some cryptic messages here, and we were playing some Detroit music, and I think he definitely feels some type of way that he was number 2, not number 1.
Right.
And but I want to say this: Cade Cunningham and Jalen Green, the game is going to be in great hands because this game was highly sought after. This game was highly anticipated, and they both came to play. And when you're looking at young superstars, you want to see them to show up when the time matters and show up when the lights are the brightest.
Right. Do you think, I'm going to throw this out to Marlene, do you think in comparison of the two players, do you think that if the players were reversed, let's say that we got the surprise that Jalen Suggs was number 1, do you think that would make any difference with regard to how Houston plays or the future franchise?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think you definitely see a gameplay. I think Cade is still trying to find his leadership role with the team. Being number 1, that takes a lot of responsibility. I think he mentioned that in the draft. And even they're saying, when you're number 1 pick, there's like a specific group. There's like a special group. Not everyone is the number 1. Right. So it's definitely a tight-knit. But yeah, they're different playing styles. Jalen is very more, you see him more executing, more up-tempo.
Right.
I think Cade is more like kind of gets his teammates and more laid back a bit. But again, it's still early. We don't know much, from college to pros or from Jalen's, G League. So it'll definitely be fun to see what it all happens.
Okay, Kelsley, you called the game. What was to you the best play or plays that each player made on the court, Jalen or Cade, if you can remember?
I know there was definitely a deep three-point shot that Jalen Green made, showing his range. I think that was key for him. Well, one thing I want to say about the Houston Rockets, their defensive intensity and their tenacity on the defensive end was really, stuck out to me because the way they had the Pistons turn the basketball over, they had no shot to win the basketball game at all. As far as Cade is concerned, he definitely has a few good plays as well. And what I really like about his game, he does get a lot of people involved, but when time does matter to step up, we've seen him in college really step up and do what he needs to do. Unfortunately, again, they just could not take care of the basketball, and that's just a young team going through some woes, and that's something that they can definitely easily fix.
Right.
And I'll add on to that, too, because we definitely saw some turnovers from Detroit, and Kelsley was wondering of what the coaching staff would say to them, But I was saying Summer League, this is where you want to make mistakes, right?
Exactly.
This is where you want to learn. This is where you want to, get the groove, get to meet your new teammates because new coaching staff, new training staff, medical, etc. Referees, you'll probably be seeing these guys, in regular season. So this is where you want to learn. This is where you want to make mistakes. And I think it's the perfect way just to showcase, especially against Houston Rockets.
Right. And one thing I want to pick up on what Marlene was talking about, and this was mentioned in the broadcast, the NBA is cutting down on the three-point fake shots. sticking out the legs. So this is the opportunity for the referees to implement the system, get the young people involved, and let them know that you can't get away with what you see on TV now. So I was wondering, did either of you notice any of the three-point shooting that the referee probably may have allowed last year, but this year they're going to clamp down on that? Did you see any three-point plays?
Me personally, I did not.
Okay.
I definitely know that is going to be a point of emphasis, and I think that's good for the game of basketball.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely free points being handed to last year, and I think that's going to definitely cut some things down. Interestingly enough, I want to see a little bit more FIBA rules being implemented in the NBA.
Whoa.
Talking about the live basketball when the ball hits the rim and you're able to touch it and flip it and stuff like that. I think that would be good for the game of basketball. I think that would add another element or wrinkle to make the game more interesting.
Another element. So are you talking about 4-point line, or are you crossing off?
Well, the 4-point line is something that can definitely be in conversations as well. But no, I'm just thinking that, the way offense has definitely picked up within the last few years, especially with the shot clock being, once the ball hits the rim, it goes back to 14 instead of 24, which kind of makes it a little bit faster
Definitely
pace.
keeps it up tempo.
Absolutely. So with the offensive ability and capability like a Curry and Kevin Durant and stuff like that, when you were talking about when you're missing or the ball hits the rim and knocking it off, I think that would just make it a little bit more challenging, because sometimes you get a shooter's bounce, and if you implement that rule, there may not be such thing as a shooter's touch, if that makes sense.
Well, I think you're talking something radical here. I think the Twitter and Instagram are going to burn up on that comment because, we are used to, because that's one of the major things that even if you're a casual fan, you can determine block shots, goaltending. This is, wave it off or something like that. So I understand what you're saying, and I'm not saying that it's not a good idea.
Go ahead and give him Kelsley's Twitter handle. Go ahead. Hit him up, guys.
Yeah, hit him up. Don't
but put this in perspective, though. Imagine how exciting it will be. It's a one-point game, right? There's a free throw, and when you're looking at that free throw and it's bouncing across the rim and you're able to tip it out, and you can win the game that way.
Okay, now we're talking hypotheticals. What about the Kawhi Leonard shot for the Philly series, and it's bouncing off the wood, and it's going on, and somebody knocks it off? Can you imagine the outrage?
Yeah, then you're messing with history.
Yes.
People don't want to mess with history. Once you start changing too many rules, then that's when stats come in, that's when history, that's when GOATs change everything. So you got to be careful with that. Yeah.
I like Marlene's idea about putting that Twitter handle for you out there. So you can have some friends that will come by and give you a piece of their mind. Okay. And another thing that I kind of want to expand upon is kind of put yourselves in the position of being a person that's trying to make the NBA team. You're not a Cade Cunningham or a Jalen Suggs. What is your mindset when you see that the whole focus is on those two people? We're talking about them now, and there's some guy who's undrafted, and he's trying to get a rookie invite to minicamp, and the more time that those two are out there, the less time for that person. Could you kind of put yourselves in those shoes and trying to figure out what's going on with that? How you feel?
Yeah, I think definitely it's all mental. You have to look at your hard work that you put in, look at the people around you, your support. There's so many success stories that are out there in the media. Duncan Robinson, Miami.
Oh, good point.
He just signed a big max, like 5 or 4, I could be butchering.
590 years.
5
and he
years,
started as a
90.
Division III person.
Yeah. His story is marvelous. There's other stories that you can just simply Google. So if you're going with the 50th pick, 60th, the very last, or undrafted at all, just take that energy, take that motivation. People say they have a chip on their shoulder. That's what gets you far. And even if you are drafted, you should still have that motivation. But I think it just gives you more fuel. But I encourage everyone, and I'm sure that if they have the right people, if they're in the right spot in the right place, their journey will be fine.
But you did bring up a good point. It is extremely difficult, right? When the star players are getting a significant amount of minutes, and you may not be able to get as much minutes as you would like. But a wise person told me this week, actually, for every obstacle becomes an opportunity, and then it's really valid to take advantage of every second that you have there on the floor. It may be a loose ball, you're diving into the stands, right? It could be just a charge or good defensive possession, right? Any small little thing that you can do to impact the game, that's something that I would do if I was in their shoes and I was undrafted.
And I'll add too, even if you're not drafted, teams are looking for their last spot on their roster. You don't need to be the most defense. You don't need a set of skills like whether it's offense or defense. If you're a good person, a good teammate, that goes a long way.
Right.
You know, people need good people in the locker room.
Right.
You know, an organization needs to run properly, and if you have the good set of people that, you know, can have your star player happy and, you know, get the motivation going, you're all set.
Yeah.
Hey,
That's very underrated.
You know,
Good
it's
point.
true too. Just to, again, adding on, but there's also European overseas scouts out here too, where you could also land a job and get paid.
Excellent point.
Let's not even think about just the NBA or even the G League. There's definitely some money to be made overseas as well.
That's an excellent point, and I'm going to bring up the name P.J. Tucker.
Hello.
He just won an NBA championship. He started in Europe, and from what I've heard, that his scouting, they scouted him in Europe, and they noticed the transition from him being in Europe to an NBA champ. So how do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, that's. I'll let Kelsley go.
I was just about to say, trust in the process. I mean, when you have your mind set on something, right, and you're in love with the process and you love what you do, it makes it easy to go away for 5 years and still doing something that you love, and then hopefully get that still opportunity to come back to the stage and do it. It takes a lot of perseverance for sure.
Yeah,
it takes a lot of goal, right? But it can be done, and a la P.J. Tucker, you see that is something that's possible.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, and like I said, there's so many success stories. There's so many different paths to get to the NBA, to go overseas, then come back. So, and I want to add on, it doesn't hurt that he wore $250,000 shoes to the championship game.
Yeah.
So if you're rocking that, I
Yeah.
just hope you get that ring.
Right. And kind of the flow with that, as I observed some of the game today, I noticed that, and we can expect this from Summer League, that it wasn't quite beautiful basketball, but what I observed is a lot of fundamentals, pick and rolls, and we noticed, you both mentioned that there were a lot of turnovers. What do you tell somebody who's just a casual NBA fan that only watches during the NBA championship, and if you actually have them to sit out there, they're like, why are you watching this? They're not playing well at all. What do you tell them?
Well, I mean, you got to understand this too. Keep this in perspective. This is a whole new league, a whole new terminology. You're talking about defensive coverages, names for the defensive coverages, even offensive plays, the style of play, the pace of the play, right? There's a lot of things to put in perspective and to just put in their shoes. Like, there's a lot of, what's the word I want to use? It's a big transition from college or even the G League to the NBA. So it takes time, and this is why this has been implemented to help ease that transition in, so that when training camp does come, they're not so far behind from the rest of the NBA players that are currently in the league right now.
Yeah, and I'll add on to any fan who only watches playoffs, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you waiting until playoffs to watch games? This next generation, the social media, the personalities, how can you not watch these games?
Right, exactly.
Even off the court and on the court, like, it's right there, people, just tune in.
The reason why I brought up this question is I'm one of these people that don't have a limited people of basketball junkies like myself. And when they're saying, why are you watching the Summer League? And I'm like, why aren't you watching the Summer League? This
Put
is
it back
exciting.
on them.
You get to see the young people, they actually grow, because now we have this, players don't go to college anymore. So this is the only opportunity you really get to see young people, transform, and you learn their names when they get to the pros.
That's a good point, especially Jalen Green, coming from G League Ignite, and even Melo coming from overseas and taking. You see a lot of new journeys coming, and it's not typical, especially what's happening now with the NIL. You don't see what
name brand.
Yeah, you don't see that happening. So I'm definitely excited to see what paths, because again, you don't need to do the traditional. There's no traditional path anymore to get to the NBA. So.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, the game is in really good hands. The trajectory of how offense is just so prolific. Like, it's amazing to see what the 2000 Lakers look like. What the 2015 Warriors look like. And then what Brooklyn Nets really could have looked like.
Well, that's an awesome. And I think this is a great opportunity to end on this note. And so I'd like to thank my guests here, Marlena Rodriguez and
Thank
Kelsley
you.
Williams. And to all those who have not watched the NBA Summer League, please do. This
Yes.
is Sam Pearson from SBC Sports Talk. Have a great evening and enjoy your basketball.
That's right.
Okay.